There are days in football when the drama on the pitch is only half the story. And then there are days like this, when everything that happens afterwards almost becomes bigger than the match itself. After Celtic's frustrating defeat to Dundee United, the reaction from their side of the city was explosive, emotional, and in one particular case, unforgettable. A live radio call quickly turned into one of those moments that spreads across social media like wildfire, the kind of rant that people replay over and over because it perfectly captures what football does to supporters when expectations collapse into disappointment. It started as frustration, the usual post-match anger, but it didn't take long before it turned into something far more chaotic, emotional, and, depending on which side you support, either painful or absolutely hilarious. The supporters' anger wasn't just about one match. It was about the bigger picture, about recruitment, decisions made behind the scenes, and the feeling that the club had lost direction at a crucial point in the season. You could hear the emotion rising with every sentence, the voice getting louder, the arguments getting more dramatic, and the presenters trying to calm the situation before it went too far. It was one of those classic football phone and moments where passion completely takes over logic, and once it starts, there is no stopping it. The rant quickly became less about Dundee United and more about the entire structure of the club, the people making decisions, and the feeling that the team had been built without the tools needed to actually win the league. What made the situation even more striking was that some of the criticism, buried beneath the emotion and exaggeration, actually had a point. Celtic's recent performances had not been convincing, and while results had sometimes gone their way, the performances themselves had lacked sharpness, creativity, and most importantly, a cutting edge in attack. The discussion quickly shifted toward the lack of a proper striker, and that became the central argument. Trying to compete for a league title without a reliable goal scorer was compared to trying to win matches with an outfield player in goal, and while that might sound dramatic, it highlighted a real issue in the squad. When chances are created but nobody finishes them, pressure builds, frustration grows, and eventually results start to slip. Dundee United, on the other hand, played the match exactly the way they wanted. They understood the pitch, the conditions, and their own strengths. They didn't try to overcomplicate anything. They played direct when needed. They used their physicality, and they made the game uncomfortable from the first minute to the last. Celtic looked like a team unsure whether to play short or long, unsure whether to control possession or play direct football, and that hesitation allowed Dundee United to take control of the match. Sometimes football is not about playing beautifully. It is about playing smart, and Dundee United did exactly that while Celtic struggled to adapt. While all of that drama was unfolding around Celtic, Rangers supporters had their attention on something completely different, the future planning of their own squad and what the next transfer window could bring. One of the most interesting situations currently being discussed involves the defender who arrived on loan and had a very mixed start to life in Glasgow. When he first arrived, there were questions about whether he would be able to handle the pressure, the pace, and the physical demands of Scottish football, especially in a team expected to dominate matches and play with a high defensive line. Early in the season, those doubts looked justified as inconsistency and positional mistakes made his performances difficult to judge. However, football can change very quickly, especially when a new manager arrives with a different system and a clearer defensive structure. Under the new setup, the defender started to look more comfortable, more confident, and more focused on the defensive side of his game rather than being exposed in risky build-up situations. With better protection from midfield and clearer defensive responsibilities, his strengths began to show more often. His physical presence, his ability in the air, and his recovery pace started to become important assets rather than hidden qualities behind tactical confusion. One performance in particular really started to change opinions. When Rangers delivered a strong victory and he played the full match with authority, winning duels, reading danger well, and looking far more composed in possession than earlier in the season. Performances like that don't just help a team win matches, they change the conversation about a player's future. What once looked like a short-term loan spell suddenly started to look like a potential long-term investment. And that is where the situation becomes very interesting for the club moving forward, especially with the summer transfer window slowly getting closer and decisions needing to be made behind the scenes. As the season moves closer to its decisive moments, Situations like this become increasingly important for clubs that are trying not only to compete now, but also to build something stable for the future. Rangers are clearly looking at more than just immediate performances. They are looking at potential, development, and also the financial side of modern football. A player who arrives on loan with limited expectations but begins to grow into the role can suddenly become a very valuable asset, not just on the pitch, but also in the transfer market. That is why the discussion around his future has become more serious in recent weeks, especially as his performances have started to show consistency rather than occasional good games. One of the key factors in this situation is his age and profile. At 23, he is still at a stage where defenders are learning their trade, improving positional awareness, decision-making, and composure under pressure. Central defenders often reach their peak later than attacking players, which means what Rangers are seeing now might only be the early stages of what he could become. Physically, he already looks suited to the Scottish game, strong in challenges, comfortable in aerial duels, and capable of dealing with direct football, which is still a major part of many matches in the league. When you combine physical ability with the possibility of tactical improvement, clubs start to see long-term value rather than short-term risk. There is also the financial reality of modern football, where signing a player is not only about what he does on the pitch, but also about what he could be worth in the future. Clubs like Rangers must think carefully about transfers, because smart business can fund future squads. If a player is signed for a reasonable fee, develops over 2 or 3 seasons, performs well in domestic competitions and European matches, his value can rise significantly. Selling a player for a profit can sometimes finance multiple new signings, and that model has become very important for clubs outside the richest leagues in Europe. So this potential transfer is not just about defending next season. It could be about the club's financial strategy over several years. Another factor that could influence everything is the situation at his parent club. If they face a difficult summer, especially if there are changes in their league status or a large squad rebuild, many players could be made available for transfer. When that happens, clubs that already know the player, understand his personality, and have already integrated him into the team environment often have an advantage. He already knows the league, he knows the expectations, and he knows what it means to play in front of demanding supporters every week. That adaptation period is already completed, which makes the risk of signing him permanently much lower compared to bringing in a completely new player from another league. From the player's perspective, there is also an important decision to be made. Staying somewhere he plays regularly, competes for trophies, and possibly plays European football can be more attractive than being part of a large squad elsewhere without guaranteed playing time. At this stage of a career, playing matches every week is often more important than simply being at a bigger club without a clear role. Development comes from matches, from pressure situations, from big games, and from mistakes that help a player improve. If he feels that his development is progressing in Glasgow, that could play a major role in any decision made during the summer. Inside the club, the coaching staff will also be analyzing not just his visible performances, but also his training attitude, professionalism, and how he fits into the dressing room. Supporters often judge players only on matches, but managers and directors look at the complete picture. A player who works hard, improves, listens to coaching instructions, and maintains the right mentality during difficult moments often becomes very valuable to a squad, even beyond pure ability. Teams that win leagues usually have players who improve over time, not just stars who arrive already finished products. So as the summer window approaches, this situation is slowly turning into one of the more interesting decisions Rangers will have to make. What started as a simple loan move to add depth to the squad has gradually turned into a genuine transfer consideration, and that says a lot about how much his situation has changed over the course of the season. Football seasons are long, and opinions change quickly, but sometimes a player just needs time, structure, and confidence to show what he can really do. Now the question is no longer whether he can handle Scottish football, but whether Rangers will move quickly enough and decisively enough to make sure his future remains in Glasgow. What makes this situation even more interesting is how quickly perceptions in football can change when a player finds rhythm and confidence. Earlier in the season, there were real doubts about whether he had a future at the club beyond the loan period, and many supporters saw him as a temporary solution rather than a long-term piece of the defensive line. Now, After a series of more composed and confident performances, the conversation feels completely different. Instead of asking whether the club should move on, people are starting to ask how much it would cost to keep him and whether the club can afford to miss the opportunity if he continues developing at this rate. Consistency is often the hardest thing for young defenders, especially in a league where matches can be very physical one week and very tactical the next. One mistake can lead to a goal, and one goal can change the entire mood around a player. What the coaching staff will be looking for now is not just good performances, but reliable performances week after week. If he can finish the season strongly, showing concentration, leadership, and composure in important matches, then the argument for signing him permanently becomes much stronger. Clubs are not just buying talent, they are buying reliability, and reliability in defense is one of the most valuable things a team can have. There is also the wider picture of how Rangers want to build their squad over the next few seasons. Successful teams are usually built around a core group of players who understand each other's game, who communicate well, and who grow together over time. Constantly changing defenders every season can create instability, misunderstandings, and inconsistency at the back. If the club believes he can be part of a stable defensive partnership for the next few years, then the decision becomes not just about this summer, but about building a defensive line that can compete for titles consistently rather than rebuilding every season. So the next few months could be very important not only for his career, but also for Rangers' planning behind the scenes. Performances, results, finances, and opportunities in the transfer market will all play a role in the final decision. Football is full of moments where a lone player quietly becomes an important part of a team without anyone really noticing at first, and this feels like one of those situations. What began as a temporary move is now turning into a genuine long-term question, and by the time the summer arrives, the club will have to decide whether this season was just a short chapter in his career or the beginning of something much longer at Ibrox. So as the season continues and attention slowly starts to turn toward the summer transfer window, this is definitely a situation that will be watched closely. Decisions like this are not only about one player, but about the direction of the team, the financial strategy of the club, and the long-term planning that successful teams always try to maintain. If the current trajectory continues, what started as a simple loan move could end up becoming a very important piece of business for Rangers in the seasons ahead. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to get all the exclusive news about Rangers FC. Don't overlook any details about your beloved team. It's crucial for Rangers FC fans. Shockwaves are rippling through Edinburgh as whispers of betrayal grip the Hibernian support. Midfield linchpin Daniel Barlaser, long regarded as a dependable presence in green and white, is now at the center of mounting speculation after reportedly agreeing terms on a 3-year deal with Rangers. While nothing has been formally confirmed by either club, the mere suggestion has ignited fierce debate among fans and pundits alike. Barlaser, who has quietly built a reputation for composure on the ball and tactical awareness, was believed to be a key figure in Hibernian's long-term plans. His potential departure, especially to a direct rival, feels less like routine transfer business and more like a stinging defection. Supporters have taken to forums and radio call-ins, voicing a mix of disbelief and frustration, with some branding the move a complete turnaround on the loyalty expected from a player in his position. Sources close to the situation hint that negotiations have been ongoing behind the scenes for some time, adding further fuel to the sense of unease. If true, it would suggest that this was no sudden development, but rather a carefully managed approach culminating in a deal that could significantly reshape both squads. Rangers, always keen to reinforce depth and control in midfield, would see Barlaser as a calculated addition, steady, disciplined, and familiar with the demands of Scottish football. For Hibernian, however, the optics are troubling. Losing a trusted performer is one matter. Losing him under a cloud of secrecy to a rival is quite another. Questions are now being asked about contract management, dressing room morale, and whether this signals further unrest beneath the surface. As the rumor mill continues to churn, all eyes remain fixed on official statements that have yet to arrive. Until then, the story lingers in that uneasy space between possibility and confirmation, where speculation thrives and loyalties are called into question. Greetings, fans. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, as it's greatly appreciated by Rangers FC. And don't forget to share your thoughts on the news in the comments section below. Until the next video, stay tuned.